Howdy, folks, and welcome to Three's a Crowd, the limited series where we turn our attention to bands that started with one person who recruited a second member, then said, "We got this." For this inaugural episode, we'll focus on duos with strong female vocals. My name's Cary Nightingale, and with me as always is my trusty sidekick, Kevin Nebrich. Kevo, how you doing?
I'm doing great, sir.
Fantastic. Now, I've got a song to share, but I know that you're chomping at the bit to present the tune score for yours, so please go ahead.
Coin-Operated Boy is a single off the Dresden Dolls' self-titled album released in 2004. We're welcomed in with a bright melody played on a toy piano, which is then carried forward in the lower registers of an actual piano, played by songwriter Amanda Palmer and supported by Brian Viglione on the drums. I imagine the toy piano introduction here was a very intentional decision, as our narrator initially describes the coin-operated boy she longs for as being just that, first describing him in ways one might characterize a personal massager, and then gradually wishing he would offer her all the things she desires in a real partner. Her coin-operated boy is an idealistic substitution for human intimacy, allowing her to imagine love without complications galore. And here we've arrived at my absolute favorite line in the song, because to this point every word so far has been joyful, and in fact the preceding couplet is somewhat silly. Amanda sings, "Many shapes and weights to choose from. I will never leave my bedroom. I will never cry at night again." That last line hits us hard because it's so unexpected. We've turned an emotional corner here. The next verse continues with mixed emotions and ends with a very interesting time change that mimics a skipping record, kind of like being stuck in an unchanging routine where more is desired. And you'll know when you've reached the song's bridge. If not because Amanda replaces her staccato melody for a beautifully arpeggiated chord progression, then because she announces it to you by breaking the fourth wall. She even explains that she is attempting to emotionally manipulate you, aiming to make you fall in love with the sad girl in the story. I found this to be just as revealing as it is cynical, which also made it somehow more endearing. But then again, I'm pretty gullible. The bridge gets pretty wild, and I doubt that I could do it justice here, so just listen to it and enjoy. Our final verse is similar to the second in that we have mostly sweet, happy fluff, leading up to a more earnest desire that her coin-operated boy is capable of telling her he loves her and that he's thinking of her. We end on the same line we began, making the story feel unfinished or unending. My tune score for Coin-Operated Boy by the Dresden Dolls is 8.6 out of 10. Cary, I know that you like this one, but listen to it again and gut check my tune score.
I'd be happy to. Give me just a moment and I'll be right back. And I'm back. Kev, thanks so much for reminding us all of the Dresden Dolls and this track from about 17 years ago. For the most part, I agree with your score. I'm just a little bit lower in my quick calculation. I landed at about an 8.1. A few notes that I had. Performance is excellent. There's no click tracks here. The way that she sings galore at about 42 seconds is just emblematic of the way that she puts a lot of feel, a lot of human emotion into her vocal delivery. It's excellent. I do not like the bridge breaking the fourth wall. I think that's my fourth commandment of lyric writing, that it breaks there. The production, I think, is excellent for two main reasons. It's got a great use of effects, things that you can do in the studio that might be hard to replicate live. That crashing and breaking glass effect, the whooshes during and after the bridge. And probably my favorite thing, you mentioned it starts out with that twinkly little toy piano. And when she sings "And He Comes to Life" in the first verse, the mix really comes alive. It's an excellent production technique. Really strong song, very polished in its production. It's a totally different approach from the song that I brought, though. The song I brought was Sun Sinking Low, a 2002 song by Mr. Airplane Man. Sun Sinking Low is a swampy, bluesy tune that says next to nothing but means quite a lot. The structure sounds at first like a pretty typical slide guitar blues. Closer inspection, though, shows that it's anything but typical. This is really just a one-chord jam with sections that last somewhere around 20 bars each. And that chord, if you're curious, is E-flat major. I even retuned one of my SGs to an open E-flat just to make sure. The lyrics feature a common blues phrasing and repetition scheme, and they're credited to Mississippi Fred McDowell, although I wasn't able to find the source material or original song by Mississippi Fred McDowell. The lyrics don't really feature a story. It's just a series of vignettes that evoke images of sunsets, doorways, and a mysterious black mare that will carry its rider to find her match somewhere on the map. Since this is a loose jam that sounds like it was recorded in a single take without really being composed or even rehearsed, it's based on a single chord with some slide ornamentation. Expectations for a tight performance are about as low as the sun's sinking. There are a few absolutely garbled lyrics that can probably be attributed to studio fright, and some spots where the drums and guitar fall out of sync. On a pop record, these would be considered errors and unforgivable. They would likely be scrubbed relentlessly or would at least demand multiple takes. But this is the blues, goddammit, and that looseness contributes to a human feel, and it's reminiscent of listening to a young band just playing their hearts out on a small stage. I've mentioned in the past that straining to hit notes just outside a singer's comfortable range can give a more emotional feel to a performance. Here, however, the strain is at the bottom end of the range, which can give the impression of sloppiness more than emotionality. Perhaps the producer should have recommended open E over open E flat, or perhaps having a capo at the second or third fret. This recording also makes it slightly hard to distinguish the bass notes on the guitar from the kick drum. That muddy low end might have been remedied with a different recording setup, or having the drummer leave the kick drum beats to only the 1 and the 3 in each measure. Now, I've just spent several minutes thrashing this production for having very little to its composition, sloppiness in its performance, and an imperfect recording mix. But I spent several hours listening to it to arrive at those conclusions. And the fact is that I enjoyed it all. And in the interest of full disclosure, I've been listening to this track periodically for about the last 15 years, with no idea how I found it or why I liked it. This track is spirited in a way many simply aren't. The lyrics evoke, then get out of the listener's way, letting imagination take hold. I rated Sun Sinking Low at a 7.1 out of 10 on the Tune Score scale. Kev, I'd love for you to slap on your headphones, give it a spin, and let us know what you think.
Sounds great. Let's do it. Okay, I'm back.
So, Kev, what'd you think?
That was great. Lyrically, very short and sweet, but very enjoyable. And I agree with what you said earlier about the differences between our two artists. I'm not sure that these two performances could have been any more different.
That's right, and I think that exploring those differences in a fireside chat would be pretty useful to our audience and frankly to us as we seek to understand more about rock duos and good music in general. But that's going to have to wait because it's time for a short break. This one's brought to you by Aunt Mary Jane's Extra Flaky Fortified Biscuits, because the best mornings always start with a little bit of wake and a whole lot of bake. We'll be right back. Howdy, folks, and welcome back. Before the break, we promised that we would have a little fireside chat to explore what, if anything, made these differing approaches by these rock duos as powerful as they were. I think the most important question that we can begin to try and answer is what we learned from these songs. So, Kev, why don't you tell the folks at home what you learned from listening to Coin Operated Boy?
Coin Operated Boy really challenged my pre-existing notions of songwriting do's and don'ts. Words were incorrectly stressed. Amanda Palmer broke the fourth wall. She used non-standard words like bitterer. At least once in this piece, the piano is played purposefully out of key. Apparently, the more rules you break, the less it matters. Each one of those things, though, is done intentionally and is used effectively to tell a story.
I think you're right, and I think that's a really good approach, the way that it was done. I don't think that we can just tell all of the aspiring songwriters out there, break all the rules you want. It's not necessarily going to work for everybody. It worked for Amanda Palmer in this case. And I think it worked a little bit for Mr. Airplane Man as well. I think the first lesson for me is listening to these tracks, it becomes obvious that you can make your song sound as rich and full as any band out there with more members, even if you've only got two folks in your band. So it shouldn't really be considered a constraint if your bass player doesn't show up, for example. The second lesson for me, duos can be both tighter and looser. Mr. Airplane Man's song sounded like a rehearsal that got recorded on accident, so it's not as tight as some of their other tunes, but duos generally can get on the same clock a lot easier because there's only two of them. So that's what I mean by tighter. But we also heard shifting tempos for dramatic effect in both of this episode's songs. And that's a lot more difficult when you have more than two people. Hell, when you have more than one person, because you're not all playing to a metronome or a click track. And that's what I mean by looser. But how about that full band sound? Let's go a little deeper into that, Kev. How do you get a full band sound with only two people?
Back when you and I played together, I think that we were always on two separate tempos.
Well, like I said, it's possible for duos to get on the same clock. It's not necessary, and that added a lot of jazziness to the Bullfights on Acid recordings that we made.
To answer your question, you could learn to play two instruments at once. Ray Manzarek played his Fender Rhodes piano bass with his left hand while playing the organ with his right, for example.
Oh, you were absolutely right there, Kev. Ray Manzarek and his talent added literal inches to the Doors' dick.
Agreed. You could also buy a shiny new loop pedal and throw that into your performance, or try harmonizing your vocals.
Yeah, those are great starts. For me, I think it starts by being very thoughtful of how you're going to fill out the low and the high ends. And that can be with your mixing and equalization, the register on your instrument, whether it's a piano or a guitar, or whatever that you're playing in, and how does that fit with and complement the vocals. And Kev, since you mentioned a shiny new looper pedal, I should probably mention a few other effects that could be used, especially for a guitarist. First off is reverb. Reverb can really thicken a sound, as can delay or chorus when they're used correctly. Distortion and fuzz can also make the sound a little bigger, but they have their own associations with genres, in case you're hesitant about that. Lastly, you could consider using a digital octave pedal like Jack White used to great effect in making his guitar sound like a bass at times and like a shrieking Valkyrie at others when he played with the White Stripes. Now, Kev, I think the final question that we could even try to answer regarding rock duos for our Three's a Crowd is less really more?
Less can be more But you could also have a big band that sounds like trash. It all depends on your vision and how much concerted effort you're willing to put into it. If you're one half of a two-person outfit, either make new friends or get creative. Either way, keep making music that you're proud of, leaning into your strengths, and keep workshopping your weaknesses.
Well, Kev, when I asked the question, is less really more? I expected you to just say sometimes and leave it at that. But for a change, you've actually impressed me with your insight.
What happened? I blacked out.
Well stated, sir. As always, we invite and encourage you, our dear audience, to give a listen to the tracks we reviewed today. They're on our Tune Scored Tracks playlist on our YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of our scores and critiques. If you're an up-and-coming songwriter, that's also a great place to recommend one of your songs for a tune score and some good old-fashioned, honest feedback. We'd love to hear from you. We've had a lot of fun today, and we hope you did too. That's been Kevin Nebrich. I've been Cary Nightingale. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay sound.